you satisfied with what you heard in there?
Absolutely not. The level of transparency was not okay.
How did it go in there?
Not well.
Were you satisfied?
They didn't even show up with the lawyers. Am I leaving satisfied? Absolutely not.
No, I'm not satisfied. I'm a member of the United States Congress. I sit on the Armed Services and the Intelligence Committee. Our job is to oversee the use of lethal force by our military outside of the United States. And I'm walking away without an understanding of how and why they're making an assessment that the use of lethal force is adequate here.
Members of the House Armed Services Committee were supposed to be briefed on the deadly strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific. But according to Democratic reps in the room, Pentagon lawyers didn't show up, and neither did the intelligence officials. And the White House policy staff who did show up, according to these House Democrats, couldn't give lawmakers any information. Meanwhile, on the Senate side, some Republicans got a briefing yesterday, but Democrats were not invited to it. Joining us now, Vice Chair of the Intelligence Committee, Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. What is this meeting, and were you really not invited?
Katie, this is so freaking outrageous. I mean, this is not some process foul. We're talking about putting American troops in harm's way. A week earlier, I got the most classified brief in what's called the Gang of Eight. You know, the absolute leadership supposed to get the exact stuff the president gets. Marco Rubio, who's my friend and who I supported, promised me that we would have the legal opinion of why this is justified, because our sailors could be put in harm's way if they are, illegally killing folks without any legal justification. And he promised that. Now, I'm not going to blame Rubio because he immediately left town to go, around the world. But we were waiting for, when's the documents going to come? When are you going to provide a fuller brief? And then the outrageousness of saying, we're going to invite a few random Republicans, not necessarily folks that are on the appropriate committees, because they're afraid of the vote next week that may say, hey, Donald Trump, no, you can't go to war in Venezuela without some congressional oversight, to invite only Republicans. And I am beyond furious with this administration. In any normal world, somebody get fired, but I'm also and I'm a bipartisan guy. I'm so bitterly disappointed with my Republican friends that somebody in that room didn't say, holy crap, we're getting the most classified stuff that we've been asking for. Why aren't there any Democrats in this room? This is not a part of this. Oversight of our military and going to war should not be a partisan issue.
Why do you think there isn't that outrage? Why do you think you are not being included on this information?
Because I think you've got a crowd at the White House, and obviously you've seen this with Gabbard and Hegseth, that want to ignore Congress at every turn. Think they are control of everything. Frankly, that's one of the reasons why allies around the world, we've even had the Dutch acknowledge they're not going to share as much intelligence with us anymore because they don't trust America anymore or this leadership. And this is where, again, we know this is in certain of these folks have authoritarian tendencies and want to ignore the law and Constitution. And if my Republican friends don't grow a spine on this, if they're going to say, okay, we're going to just take a partisan briefing on whether we put our troops in harm's way, where the heck are we headed in this country? Where is the outright? Now, some of my friends have said, yes, we thought it was weird, and a couple of folks have now made comments. But the idea that this is going to, somehow be excused as a process foul, the fact that this is going on and nobody's getting fired, I remind you, too, this is not the first time. This is not a, oops, we made a mistake. When the president bombed Iran, they didn't call the Democrats. They only called certain Republicans. This is just not the way our government's supposed to work.
What are we doing? What are we doing in the Eastern Pacific? What are we doing in the Caribbean? Is the goal to blow up drug boats, or and we're going to apparently maybe go into Venezuela? What is the goal? Is it regime change?
Listen, Katie, you would think, as the vice chairman of the Intelligence Committee, I ought to be able to answer that. They've not even showed the legal justification. What happens with our sailors in any kind of international court of law if there's not a legal justification? The truth is, I think the Biden administration should have pushed back harder against Venezuela when the Venezuelan people got out and voted in record numbers to get rid of Maduro. He's a bad guy. But the idea now that we have sent an aircraft carrier, a bunch of other naval ships, the aircraft carrier based in Norfolk is down there. And these are the same sailors' families who said months ago, holy heck, why is this Signal Gate giving away our most classified information on a non-classified channel? Why is nobody held accountable? These same sailor families are now being put in harm's way, and their senator, and it was a senior Democrat, isn't getting the same briefing or information. So I don't know if the goal is to get rid of the drug trafficking, and if there are drugs on all these boats, stop a couple of them, show us the drugs, show us how bad these guys are, rather than just arbitrarily blowing them up. And then if there is some goal on Venezuela, don't you have to at least read in Congress and, frankly, the American people? This was the guy, remember, Trump was going to end these endless wars. This was the guy that was going to put America first. Well, it doesn't take a great historian to realize that America's history of intervention in Central America and South America has been a pretty bad record. And if this is his plan, and to only say I'm going to only share my real plan with certain Republican members, and somehow Congress has no oversight role, guys, this is not normal. None of this is normal.
Let me ask you about your counterpart, Tom Cotton. You've spoken about how you had a good relationship with Marco Rubio when he was the head of the committee. You voted for his confirmation. You said you're still getting decent communication with him. What about Tom Cotton? Do you guys talk? Do you get along? Is there cooperation?
Listen, all I'd say this. Yeah, listen, we get along. But I got to tell you, when Saxby Chambliss was chair of the committee, when Richard Burr was chair of the committee, all Republicans, frankly, when Marco was chair of the committee, I don't think anyone would have sat by and not said, isn't this a little weird? Where Congress has been asking for months since this operation started. And now we're getting a brief, and I'm looking around the room, and it's only Republicans, and it's not even
I hear
just Republicans
you. So
from the armed services.
My question is, why don't you think they think it's weird? Do you suspect that there's something going on? There's a coordinated effort to keep you out? Are they trying? Take it to the logical conclusion. If you're being shut out, what is it?
Well, remember, this is not the first time, because that wacko Laura Loomer didn't want me to do oversight. I got refused the ability to go do oversight at one of our key intelligence agencies. And again, the issue here is, if there's only 17 of us in the Senate to get access to this, if we don't do our job, I think the truth is, at least a big crew in the White House thinks they can completely ignore Congress. And I just don't get, I know a lot of my Republican colleagues love our country every bit as much as I do. But if they are just going to roll over time and again and excuse this kind of behavior, their heads would have exploded.
Senator, I want to get you on a couple things before we have to let you go. Donald Trump says he wants to test nukes. Good idea, bad idea? Do we need to?
Bad idea without any further explanation. I got no idea what made him change his position.
All right, let me ask you now about the shutdown. We're now very far into it. We're nearing the longest shutdown in history. SNAP benefits are going to run out this weekend. 750,000 furloughed employees not getting paid, including TSA agents and air traffic controllers who are still working. How do you see this ending?
We got to find, both sides got to find an exit ramp. And the truth, and here's the thing, again, I've been in every bipartisan gang in the last decade. My fear is, and yesterday's example is why I feel this way, that Republicans didn't raise their hand. I don't think any Republican senator can make any deal without Donald Trump's blessing. The way we did these in the past was we had to both piss off each of our own sides if we found some place in the middle. I don't think there's any ability to get a deal done without Trump. But we got to end this. The amount of pain in my state, and we got a ton of federal workers. We got people's heads exploding about the health care cost increases. I will give our governor credit. He is stepping forward with state money to fill the gap on SNAP. But, We're the richest country in the world, and we're going to have millions of Americans going without their SNAP benefits at the same time that our food banks are overloaded. You know, this is the performance of a third world country, and these are people's lives. So we need an off-ramp, and I hope we're going to find it next week.
All right, Senator Mark Warner of the great state of Virginia, thank you very much. As you said, some money from the state's going to go to try to fill that SNAP benefit gap, at least through November. Senator, thank you so much.